Hello, welcome North Carolina beginning teachers. I just want to welcome you to this session today. If you've ever been in a PD before that's held virtually, which you probably have if you've been in education at all this year, you know that we normally talk about norms. And this was the first slide that was presented to me, and I think that this is a great way for us to start off. So let's work together, do our best to learn as much as we can, and respect and support each other through all the challenges. Let's do this. I want you to take that in mind today because I'm going to consider those our personal norms. Those are our norms of our session today. And even though we're doing this asynchronously, as I'm recording this session to you on May the 10th at 3:33 p.m., I want to make sure that you know what our expectations are while we're working through this together. So let's begin. The title of this session today is Responding to Your Students with Teacher Sensitivity. And if you signed up for this session, it's because you know that there are two things that are important in education. That's building relationships and using those relationships to impact student achievement. And so the question that we have to answer today is, how do we get to know our students deeper and authentically? My name is Sean Lindsay. I'm a instructional coach at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and I work for the North Carolina New Teacher Support Program. So I'm so excited to get to present this to you today because in my work in Charlotte, I know that this is important, and I know that you, wherever you are here because you want to know more about just getting to know your students and building relationships with kiddos. So I like to start off my presentations with just a little bit of housekeeping. That was part of the housekeeping, but I think it's also important to know where we're going today. So these are our session outcomes. So we're going to cover the following concepts, principles, and procedures of that's teacher sensitivity, a caring culture, and then also remember that impact that it's going to have on student achievement and student performance. You're going to apply this through these discussions that we're going to have. So we're going to try this out where you will get to have discussions asynchronously with your other peers that are watching these videos as well. And I'm going to share a ton of resources, ideas with you. So I encourage you, go grocery shopping in a sense. Just sort of walk around and look with a discerning eye to see what it is that you want to take away from this presentation today. These are our North Carolina professional teaching standards. As you're reflecting on last school year or looking forward to next school year, these are the standards that will be addressed in this presentation. So standard 2, establishing a respectful environment for a diverse population of students. Standard 4, teachers facilitate learning for their students. And standard 5, teachers reflect on their practice. And after the year that we had, I know it's so important for us to make sure that we are being reflective and thinking about how can we use all of what we learned last year to impact our students next year. Last piece of housekeeping. You're going to want to open this Padlet. You'll open that Padlet by just opening up another tab or another window in your address bar and typing bit.ly/teacher sensitivity. If you've ever used bit.ly before, you know that it's case sensitive. So that means uppercase is uppercase, lowercase is lowercase. So make sure that if you're having a hard time accessing that link, that you typed in everything just as you see it right there. So also important to note, like I said, I'm recording this at a different time than you're watching this. So if you need to, take a pause. You can literally pause the video and go at your own pace. So pause the video and type this into the link, into your address bar, and then come on back and press play, and we'll begin. So if you have been in education for any amount of time at all, you might have seen this video by Rita Pierson. This is an iconic video by Rita Pierson, who spent her entire life in education. And she shares with us during this video just a lot about teacher sensitivity. She doesn't use the words teacher sensitivity, but she shares so many stories about teacher sensitivity. So as you're watching this video, if you hear some iconic quote, some quote that just like really speaks to your soul, I'd like for you to pause the video, navigate over to that Padlet, and add a quote into that first column. So right now, you'll probably have my video up on one side of your screen, and then you also have this Padlet. You can add that quote that you'd like by clicking that plus button and then typing in any of the quotes. Add your quote here. And you can type that there and it'll pop up for you right there. You'll also be able to see other teachers and others of your peers' quotes as well that they thought were really deep. So let's go ahead and watch this video.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good, some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. They said, that's okay, Miss Pierson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard. How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class because I am the best teacher and you are the best students. They put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise, you just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so, I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pierson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, minus 18 sucks all the life out of you. Plus 2 said, I ain't all bad. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
I think every single time that I watch this video, I take something new away from it, and I just can't help but smile. She is just like, she is the epitome of an educator. And I think that more educators could stand to be champions for their students. So that's the reason why I want to do this presentation for you all. I hope that you took some great quote out of there, and I'll be checking back on that Padlet to see what you added to it. One of my favorite quotes was, -18 sucks the life out of you, but +2 says you ain't all bad. I love the optimism, just the positivity. And I think she says a lot in just that quote itself about teacher sensitivity. So I want you to go back to that Padlet. And in that Padlet, I want you to add your own definition, just what you're feeling after you watch that video. What are you feeling? What does teacher sensitivity mean to you as a beginning teacher in North Carolina? And it doesn't have to be some long rigmarole. It doesn't. It can be 4 to 5 words. It can be 2 to 3 sentences, whatever you'd like to add. You will go to your Padlet, and where it says define teacher sensitivity, click that plus button and write something. And my hope is that by the time you're done writing something, someone else will have written something, or maybe someone already has something there that can springboard your thoughts. And all you have to do, if you like what someone else has already put, is click that heart button to show them some love, show them some positivity, show them that, you know, someone else sees what they're writing, and sees the value of it. So remember, right now, because this is asynchronous, just take a pause on this video. Take as long as you need so that you can add your own definition of teacher sensitivity into that second column and respond to other people, show them some love, all right? I'm trusting you to pause and then come back when you're done. All right, so this is the definition of teacher sensitivity that I have from the University of Virginia. I'm just going to read it out because it's solid and there's a lot of great pieces in here. It's also a mouthful, so I might take more than one deep breath as I'm reading this. So, teachers are sensitive when they consistently respond to students and are effective in addressing students' questions and concerns and needs. Teaching sensitively includes an awareness of individual students' academic and a social emotional needs in a way that allows teachers to anticipate areas of difficulty and provide appropriate and effective learning opportunities and levels of support for all students in their classrooms. I told you it's a mouthful. As I'm reading through this, I think consistency, that's so important. Teacher sensitivity can't just happen once a week. It can't just happen once a month or once a day. It's got to be consistent. But then there's so many other pieces I think are important. So I highlighted some pieces. This addressing students' questions, concerns, and needs. That's important. This awareness of individual students. You have to know your students. And then the ability to give support for all your students, your high students, your low students, your students in the middle, and to be able to anticipate the amount of support that they need. That's teacher sensitivity. So we're going to collaborate one more time. And when I think about teacher sensitivity, I think about three buckets. The first is awareness. The second is responsiveness. And the third is student comfort. In just a few minutes, I'm going to go over some resources, some ideas that you could use right away to be able to address awareness, responsiveness, and student comfort in your own classrooms. But right now, I'd like for you to take just maybe 1 to 2 minutes and navigate to the Padlet and add your three or your questions, sorry, add your thoughts to those three questions. So that awareness, like what does awareness look like? Awareness of your students. What does that look like in the classroom? Rita Pierson had some awareness in her classroom when she knew that one of her students, might have needed a snack or might have needed some deodorant. But she also had awareness when she knew that maybe she should put a +2 instead of -18. Second piece, responsiveness. So, what are some creative ways that you can check in with students? How can you get to know your students and respond to them? And then the third is student comfort. So, how do you create an inclusive and safe environment for students? How can you make that happen? So, remember, I want you to use this Padlet, navigate to it, and answer those three questions: awareness, responsiveness, and student comfort in the Padlet. You can respond to other people's as well. Remember, you can always hit that plus button or that heart button in case you just really like what someone else has had to share. So remember, pause the video. And then once you're done with that task, come on back and I'm going to share with you some resources. All right. Welcome back. We're going to start off. I hope that you all found it was helpful to read other people's thoughts about awareness and responsiveness and student comfort in the Padlet. I also hope that you got to share some of your expertise as well. That Padlet is one of your artifacts. You can take this with you and use that as some support for you as you're trying to build up your own teacher sensitivity toolkit. So let's start off with awareness. And how I'd like to define awareness as being in tune with the students, anticipating when they may need support engaging in activities and with other students. So, how can you build awareness in the classroom? The first piece is proximity. So, you can't just stand right there in the front of the classroom. You got to move throughout the whole classroom. You got to walk by kids. You got to see the work that they're producing, see their body language, walk throughout the classroom and engage with them. The second is eye contact. I know that it's harder in a virtual world to get that eye contact. If you're moving into face to face, you'll be able to get that as well. But also, don't stand there the whole time and teach facing the bulletin board or the whiteboard or your smart board. You got to look at your kiddos in their faces. You got to see what they're looking like. Check-ins are super important in the classroom. If you know that a kid's having a rough day, check in with them. talk to them, learn about what's going on with them, and use that time to encourage them. A lot of times, check-ins are all about being proactive. So if a kiddo is having a hard time at home or before they came to your class period or in the class period before you, checking in with them and then making sure that you circle back around if they need that support is so important. My fourth idea behind awareness is self-awareness. So what's your body language communicating to your other students? Always be aware too, when's the last time you smile? A lot of teachers, they get so caught up in classroom management, they get so caught up in their work and their content, they forget to smile. And students feel that. Students feel more comfortable when they smile or when you smile, and you'll probably be able to be a mirror to them as well. The other thing is availability. I always think, when I think about availability, I think about really good waiters, are like always looking around. They always are ready. They're there. They know when you need water. They know really good pencil. Or, I'm sorry, really good teachers know when you're going to need a pencil, or they can tell. Like they know what's going on in their classrooms, and they're always available to their students. So awareness for teachers really oftentimes means that you anticipate any problems, and then you notice when students have this sort of lack of understanding. You can make eye contact with students and say, you can see if they're just not understanding what's going on in your classroom, and you can address that. This was a really cool strategy I saw for building awareness in your classroom, and that's through check-ins. This teacher uses a virtual check-in. So at the beginning of every single class, and you could do this as they're walking into your class in a face-to-face way. She says, I want you to complete this form, and then they complete the warm-up. So they complete a check-in form, and then they do their do now. And that's part of their entrance procedure. Now, on that check-in form, she asks them like three really simple questions. How are you feeling today? Oh yeah, what's your name? How are you feeling today? And is there anything that you need from me? And so you can see the students' responses here. Like this student, like she's got four students in her class that are doing great. But then even the student that is great seems like they need some help on problem number 3 on the math homework. So we'll make sure we have some awareness and we can check back in on that student. I've also got a bunch of students that are just saying, okay, maybe they need some better internet, or maybe they'll need some help in a little while. And so being aware of what your students need, this is a really creative way that you can build that awareness in your classroom. This teacher did that in the virtual space last year. And you can probably do the same thing face to face this upcoming year, if that's what you've got going on in your district or in your school. So that was awareness. Let's talk about responsiveness. The definition of responsiveness that I want to share with you is that you use verbal and nonverbal cues. You use every opportunity you can to gather information about and respond to children's needs. So you're being responsive to individual styles, individual learning styles, individual needs, and individual abilities. So what does that mean? It means offer that individual support to students. So as you're walking around, you might make sure that you check in with each student on your laps. You might make sure that you do some small groups, some ability groups, so that you can make sure that students feel comfortable and you're responding to their needs. If they say that they need support, or if you're seeing that look on their faces that you got on the right side, make sure that you adjust that. Follow up with those kiddos. The second is acknowledge issues. So consider any emotions that they have, any out of class factors, and you can spend time in your classroom. This is important. Spend time talking about issues that impact your classroom and be solutions oriented. So make sure if you've got some compulsive cheating in your classroom or some compulsive fighting, have those conversations. Hear out your students and spend time being solutions oriented, so that those aren't just like forgotten about. You got to acknowledge the issues are happening and address them head on. The third thing is adjust your lessons. So be responsive to your learners. If they're not getting it, why would we move on? Provide wait time. Think about pacing. Slow down your pacing or speed it up based off of if they're really having a hard time or if they're really getting it and flying through the content. And then also think about differentiation as well. Sure, there's tons of PDs on differentiation, but thinking about all the learners that you have in your classrooms, And you need to be responsive to each of their learning, each of their abilities to learn. Here's some creative ways that you can be responsive and learn, be responsive and connect with your students. So daily check-ins, I shared one with you already. Padlet is a great little back channel that you could use to communicate with your students. Um, I've done for my virtual students, little office hours or pop-ins. You could also do the same thing after school as well. You could offer some tutoring or some office hours in as well. Interest inventories are so important, and I'll make sure that I share that link with you guys as well. But interest inventories, so that you can learn more about what kids like, and then you can use that to plan for instruction. So if you know your students are really, really, really into, I don't know, marine life, for some reason, you can find some online real outs, or we can build some literature circles, or some choice boards that are even just like themed in the same thing that your students like. If I got kids that like Minecraft, I'm going to take that same choice board that I've used for years and years, and I'm just going to put some Minecraft pictures on it. And even that is just going to motivate your students, and be responsive to things that they like. Flipgrid is a really easy way for you to connect with students. It lets them create little videos, and you can create videos as well. Questions of the day, and then Spirit Week. Those are fun. So question of the day are things that you could do for morning meeting too. If you've ever heard of morning meeting, great way to be responsive to your students and getting to know your students as well. The goals of morning meeting are to build community in your classroom, build trust. You set like this positive tone in your classroom and reinforce all these positive behaviors that you see. One thing I love to do at morning meeting is I love to shout out anything positive that I've been seeing in the classroom. Any trends or any students that are just really rocking it out. I want other students to see that those students are being praised for that. And so the structure of a morning meeting every day, this can be at the beginning of your class period, at the beginning of your day. You can also do an afternoon meeting as well. Just do a greeting, say hello to everybody, you share. And so the sharing could be shout outs. I like in my classroom to share my own shout outs, but I also make sure that I let students own that as well and give opportunities for students to shout out other students. That's empowering. I share positive news or any classroom concerns as well. That's where we're addressing issues that we have or students have in the classroom. And we're being solutions oriented. You can do group activities, name games at the beginning of the year, things that, build community. And then morning message, just what's going on in the classroom, what's going on in the school that they might need to know about, any upcoming announcements, any upcoming events, what's our discussion question of the day. Those are all really great ways that you can build up your teacher sensitivity to the things that are going on in your classrooms and be responsive to the needs of your students. Now, sometimes all of those things, all those positive things that you built up in your classroom still don't work. And sometimes tensions rise in your classrooms. Rita Pierson mentioned, you've got those tough students, and sometimes those tough students do not miss a day, and that's because they need you the most. So here's a list of activities or a list of ideas that you can do, that you can support your students when those tensions begin to rise in your classrooms. And if you've got that awareness, then you're going to be able to notice when students' tensions are rising, and you can be responsive to that as well. Some of my favorites are providing choices. If you've got a kindergartner or if you've got a 12th grader, giving them choices lets them own the process, and it makes them feel like little adults, and everybody wants a little bit of autonomy from now and then. Number 3 is important to me. You get a kid that's really, really loud, if you start whispering to them and just like start asking them questions and responding to them with whispers, it completely just de-escalates them. And it's one of the most interesting phenomenon. You try this with your boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever at home. It's quite funny. It works. And then also, like, you don't forget, education is a partnership. So use other people in the building and use people that are outside of the building. You've got to have some people on board to support you. I think of it like the student, the teacher, and the kid. The student, the teacher, and the parents. So bring those parents in on board. Have some conversations with them as well. Use them as resources. Use other people in the building as resources, like counselors, deans of students, assistant principals. and try to bring those in as proactive conversations as well. So these are tons of examples that you can use when tensions rise. But let's move on to how we can build student comfort in our classrooms. So this is our third piece of teacher sensitivity. And so students seek comfort and guidance from their teachers and other students. They freely participate in class and they take risks. We want to build that up. And there's two ways that we can do that. That's through getting to know your students and then creating and maintaining that positive classroom environment. So here's a bunch of ways that you can use to get to know your students in your classroom. You can use them at the beginning of the school year, at the beginning of the semester. You can use it throughout the school year, at morning meeting, at recess, at lunch, anytime. Tons of activities there. Like I said, morning meeting, I'm a big fan of meeting times and meeting spaces. Do things like that. Lunch bunch is cool. Have lunch with your students. Stay away from the teacher's lounge and maybe even just choose one day a week. I used to always do Teacher Tuesdays, and my kids looked forward to Teacher Tuesdays. And sometimes it had to be Teacher Thursdays, and that's okay. Sometimes it had to be Fun Friday, and I couldn't do Tuesday, Thursday, or I just wasn't feeling it. But sometimes those days were the days where I had the best connections with my students. So there's tons of ways that you can get to know your students. Even through classmate scavenger hunts, student dictionaries. Like, I mean, who knows what sheesh means? Like, have students create dictionaries for all these different cool vocabulary terms that only they use, and try to get them or try to get you to use these terms too. That's a really great way to get to know them. This is one of my favorite activities. This is like self-accountability. If you don't take anything else away from this presentation, I want you to make sure that you do this downgrades activity. And I share this with anybody who just wants to get to know their students and wants to reflect on that. Like, how have you gotten to know your students? And this activity, if you want to take a pause and do this activity, you absolutely can. The idea is you take a 3-column piece of paper. You can do it on paper, you can do it virtually. Just do 3 columns. And in that first column, I want you to write your students' names, but write them in the order that you remember them. Try not to do it like in alphabetical order. Try not to do it in number order or anything. Just write down students' names quickly as possible as you remember them. That's important. That first piece is like, it's just like that alone is interesting. It's like, who do you remember first? And then who do you struggle to remember? That's important. That lets you know, well, okay, how am I getting to know these students authentically? So once you're done with that whole list, then you move to the second column. So in that middle column, you're going to write one positive thing about each student, but one positive thing that has nothing to do with schoolwork at all. So I might say, like, Jenny likes horses. Matt skates every weekend at his local skate park. Maria lives with her grandmother. Jonathan takes care of his 2 younger cousins. Like, write down one positive thing about each student. That's another way that you can reflect. Like, okay, there are some students that you might realize you don't know one positive thing about them, and that might lead you to begin to explore them and get to know them a little bit better, get to know them more authentically. The last column, and this might be the most important column, but they're all so good. The third column, just put a check mark if you've connected with those students on those things. So if I've talked to Matt, if I've talked to Jenny about her liking horses, put a check next to it. If I've talked to Matt and him going to the skate park last weekend, put a check next to it. That's important because it's not just about what we know about our students. It's about, do they know that we know that about our students? Have we acknowledged all of the gifts, the positive things that they're bringing to the classroom? And so if we haven't, then we're almost taking them for granted. And we want to make sure that, as teachers, that we don't take for granted all the gifts, the positive things that our students are bringing into our classrooms. So consider, please, please, please consider this downgrades activity as you can reflect on your past school year or do this after the first quarter of this next upcoming school year. Do this activity so that you can reflect on what you know about your students. And then the last thing, just for the ones that you've struggled to name, for the ones that you have, you don't know anything positive about them, make a plan. So that could be lunch bunch. That could be you could decide to do a nice share out, a share activity during your meeting time, or you can just connect with them before class starts, just to see, just to learn more about them. That's going to help build those authentic relationships. So that's the one piece of student comfort is building relationships with students. But once you've built those relationships, you've got to create that classroom that's positive and maintain it as well. And so, some ways that you can do that, once again, have those genuine conversations with students, calls, send notes home for positive things. I've known teachers that send surveys with their students and say, hey, when I have positive news to share, who would you like for me to share it with? Name three people. And they could name their mom, they could name their maybe their youth pastor and their neighbor that lives next to them or their grandmother. They name three people, and you make sure that you shout those kiddos out to the people that are important to them. And they're going to come the next day into school beaming and have multiple good days. When you're having those calls home with students or to parents, make sure to you make it really quick. Like, hey, I've got some really great positive news I want to share about Jeremy. Do you have a minute? And that way they know, hey, this is good. Or I'm sorry, this is Mr. Lindsay from so-and-so elementary. I've got some positive news I want to share. So you keep it quick so that they don't hang up on you, right? And you don't waste their time, but you also let them know, hey, this is positive from the get-go. A lot of parents aren't used to hearing those positive phone calls. Celebrations. So celebrations can happen lots of different ways in the classroom. I'm going to do a few now, like send him some love. If somebody does something well in my classroom, we've done this. To send somebody some love, really silent. You can give two claps. So two claps, and everybody does it at the same time. I've seen in other classes, give them a whoosh and a wave. So let's give Jackson a whoosh and a wave. Whoosh. And so they do the whoosh sound and they do the wave. That's it. We're celebrating them. Kiss your brain. That's it. Silent high fives to your neighbor. So instead of making the noise, they just do that. Also good for social distancing. And then shout outs. Don't forget to give shout outs at any point in time. Class routines like positive narration is just great. So anytime students are doing the right thing, I see Brianna and Jeremy, they're both like sitting up nice and tall. Great job. Just always giving people the positivity that they deserve when they're doing the right things for you. Positive, specific, affirming feedback. Like instead of just being like, great job, Tanisha, like be specific. What are you telling her great job for? Like, Tanisha, you're being a fantastic scholar today because you're sitting up nice and tall. You're using evidence from the text in your responses. I love to see it. Like, that's going to make her proud and it's going to make her to continue to do that. So maintain that positive classroom environment in your class. That's how we make sure that we have student comfort. And that's a big piece of teacher sensitivity. So I want us to have some quick closing thoughts today. I want you to think about an educator from your past with whom you had a significant relationship. Just think about what that educator did differently. And how can we overcome those obstacles that can stop you from making meaningful relationships? I'm going to play this video for you. This is a video about a world without teachers. If you're running out of time, I totally understand. Please make sure that you watch this. At some point in time, you can just YouTube a world without teachers. But if you have some time today, I encourage you, watch this before you skip to the next slide.
That's what you're gonna ask her too?
That's a hard question.
A world without teachers.
What would the world be like without teachers?
Chaos.
Sad, because I won't learn anything.
The younger generation wouldn't have anyone to look up to learn from.
Walk around ignorant.
I mean, we could keep the teachers, but just no homework. That'd be pretty cool.
Everybody would be going cuckoo and we wouldn't know anything.
I think that is the scariest thought that anyone could ever have.
I think it will be craziness just because I feel like teachers are, besides our parents, the first people we meet who like shape who we become.
I haven't always been like the best student throughout my whole life.
I was always in trouble.
I had suffered 3 Fs and I realized like, oh, whoa, I need to fix that, you know?
4th grade was over. I'm here 5th grade, we graduate, 6th grade. Hey, Miss Gonzalez, how you doing? And then she's like, oh yeah, I heard these are your grades. What's going on in that science class? Like, she was like totally just keeping up. And I just felt like, whoa, like something's different about that.
Gave me the time of day mostly. It was very it was very engaged in stuff that I was doing. Even though I was in detention, I was still learning.
And she was the one teacher who really saw a lot in me to make me feel like I wasn't the kid that other teachers were saying.
And there was a point where I said, okay, I'm gonna fail my French class because I haven't been there. So I haven't done any homework. I'm just gonna drop out before I fail. And then she specifically came to me and said, no, I'm gonna work out a deal with you so that if you stay, you won't fail.
When you didn't do good at school, she would chew you out, but she would always give you a chance to make it up. You know what I mean? She would never put you low standard and just leave you there. You know, and that's one thing I like about teachers. They won't leave you behind.
You know, and when I got accepted into colleges, the first thing I thought is like, I better go. And I better go and tell her. I'm gonna be like, guess what? I got into Penn State, I got into a UC, I got into all these colleges.
Actually inspired me to pursue political science.
She's basically the one that taught me to just keep trying.
I can accomplish more than I probably think I can.
I felt it. Like, she didn't have to do that, but it made the difference.
You see, I'm getting emotional. Because, like, she's great, you know? Give me a minute. I wouldn't be here without her, you know? And I'd like to thank her so much for that. Thanks, Mr. Victor, you know? Hope you see this, and I hope you know that you mean a lot to me, you know, you're really important. And yeah.
What was your teacher's name again?
Mr. Marable.
It's Mr. Elmore.
Shout out, Mr. Benedum.
Miss Harris.
Her name was Casey Crocker.
She just exhibited like such a raw passion for teaching. It made me want to teach. Like, I want to do that for people. Like, that's a beautiful thing. So yeah.
So I hope that was as inspiring for you as it was for me. I want you to know that when you increase your own teacher sensitivity, you impact students in so many beautiful ways. And I know that students are going to be achieving in so many important ways, and just because of the work that you've done. And don't forget, like, it's so important to be an educator. It's so important. So thank you, BTs in the state of North Carolina, just for doing everything that you're doing and for joining education, because we need teachers. There would be no world without you. So I'd like for us to close out with a final activity just called Hashtag It. Head on back to that Padlet, and I'd like for you to just reflect on the information that you were presented today. Create 1 or 2 hashtags that represent your learning, and then type that in that final column. So go on over here, final column, type in whatever your hashtag is. And then remember, you can always show some other people some love by responding to their hashtags as well. So for those of you who aren't familiar with hashtags, just do a little number sign. And the perfect hashtag is memorable, it's unique, and it's relevant. So whatever you learned today, try and make it really memorable, unique, and short and sweet. So do that really quickly. And as you're doing that, I hope that you continue to enjoy the rest of your sessions today. Enjoy the BT Summit. Enjoy all these productive learning sessions. And I hope that you enjoyed this one. So if you want to know more, if you want to know any of these resources, or if you just have some questions, my email address is right here at the bottom. This is my mobile phone number as well. And then you can follow us. Remember, I'm an instructional coach for the North Carolina New Teacher Support Program at UNC Charlotte. Follow us at our Twitter, follow us on Facebook. Tons of resources always shared there. So if you have a professional Twitter, follow that and retweet us, like us.